What's happening? You got the Retro Gaming Hippie coming back to you with a review of my favorite game series to play right now. That is the Gold Box series on the Commodore 64. Now, if you saw some of my earlier videos, you would have seen that I'd already reviewed Pool of Radiance, which was the first Gold Box game released on the Commodore 64 and was the first game in the Forgotten Realms series. Now, I also have the second game, which is Curse of the Azure Bonds, and the third game, which is Secret of the Silver Blades. But right now, I'm having a little bit of disc issue with Curse of the Azure Bonds, so I decided to jump away from that series, and today I'm going to give you a look at the first game in the Dragonlance series, Champions of Krynn. Now, this game was released in 1990, and if you would have purchased it back then, you would have received, of course, the discs, this beautiful gold box. But if you were to open it up, you would get a mail away to give to your TSR LJN era, a nice little quick guidebook on controls and some of the game's mechanics. Those cool fold-out posters of future and past products. Of course, you would get a catalog as well of lots of items to be given. The Adventurer's Journal that you're definitely going to need as you go through this game to reference, not only to boot it up, but also it has maps and things of that nature and a lot of great information, as does the regular little guide that's more specific about party abilities and how the game functions. Now, of course, you can see I don't have the best setup to show you a lot, but I'll give you a little bit of a look at what it is in the basic town setting, what it is in the bigger setting of the world, and maybe a battle if we can find one. So grab your man-at-arms and let's shoot it up. Now, some of the improvements I noticed right away when I was thinking about the Pool of Radiance, which was the very first game we released on it, was most notably the ability to heal yourself. I believe they fixed this in Curse of the Azure Bonds, where instead of having to recast and relearn heal spells, you just had a fix button that just recycled healing as quick as it could through your characters. So, this is your basic town setting. A lot of things are done via key. You can go to a hall that's like camping, where you can learn your spells, rest your party, scribe new spells, things of that nature. Trading hall is where you're going to train your folks to see if they can go up to the next level. The Commandant is a guy who will definitely give you orders and direction as to where you're supposed to go next in the game and maybe give you some rewards. The Armory is where you're going to buy items to help you in your quest, and some of the bigger towns that you can actually walk through, they have doors that I'll show you in a little bit. Actually have magic shops too, so you can get magic items. A vault to store your treasure, because it definitely is tricky to carry a lot of gold and items. It's going to slow your players down. A temple that's going to heal everything that you need to have healed. A bar so you can learn about anything that might be going around in the region. And that's it. One of the things, of course, I love about the Gold Box games is how you can customize your characters. Here today we've got the Macho Man Randy Savage, we've got Vince McMahon, Leaping Lenny Poffo, Scary Sherry Martel, the Dingo Warrior because Ultimate Warrior wouldn't fit, and of course the lovely Miss Elizabeth. That's who my party is. So now we're going to leave that city and I'll go jump down into the world map, and then we will show you a little bit of city, and then we'll wrap this up really quick. For joystick play today, we're going to be using the Boss controller by Wiko. One function about this is kind of interesting, but I don't use it in this game, at least it doesn't work, is the controller itself will rotate on its plane. So imagine if you had a tank, this could be how you rotate your turret, and this is how you move the track. So that's kind of a cool function. Nice little controller. The Boss Wiko stick. And of course, with all your D&D Commodore 64 games, or any Commodore 64 games, there's a little bit of load time. So let's leave this city and trek on to the next. So this is the world map. I know you can't see this very well with my state-of-the-art production, but it's pretty basic. You're a little tiny dot. There's some squares, some circles you can go to, and a big, huge land mass around it. It's not a whole lot of places to go to. Honestly, in my experience, these Gold Box D&D games, for the most part, are relatively short if you know where to go. You can, of course, take the time exploring a lot of area and even taking the old graph paper out and mapping it out yourself. But for the most part, they're pretty short games to go through. So now we'll go down to the city of Jellic. And you will see how a city looks that you can actually go through. Its walls, its doors. When you get up to certain doors, it may say that it's a magic shop, a training hall, a bar, or things of that nature. So that's where you get a little bit of a discrepancy. Of course, I'm going to have to swap discs. Black Butte Porter, one of my favorite beers. I don't drink very often, but when I do, it's a Black Butte or an Obsidian Stout. Deschutes Brewery, definitely check them out. And the dungeons that you go through in the game are kind of set up in the same manner as the city you're going to see. Instead of doors necessarily or walls, some of them will just be cave archways. And very few of them, if any, really actually have any place you can go to and buy stuff. But the general setup, as far as having your north-south, your tracking of your area, and then if you're lucky, an area map that looks like that so you can kind of see where you're going. Dungeons and cities that you can enter are kind of built the same. And you can trek around the city until you run into possibly a fight. If it's a battle, I'll get a chance to show you a little bit of a battle. The town's Roughnecks. And this is where we turn into turn-based combat. There's also a function that you can use called auto. As you get higher level and you're in lower level areas, I recommend it because it basically will put your characters on auto and you can walk away and they'll do whatever seems to be best for them. If you have wands or necklaces and things that equipped, your user is going to use them. If you have arrows and bows equipped or even just arrows, they'll revert back to the bow once something gets out of range, if you will, or in range for a bow. So it's really kind of a nice feature, but there are some instances where you want to be careful about it. Here I'll just show you a setup battle and not put them on auto. And you'll get to take a look at how I customize this particular group as well. One thing you won't get is sound. I'm having a little bit of sound issues with my 1702 monitor that I haven't looked into yet. One thing I will say about the Commodore 64 D&D games, they're not much for sound anyway. There's very few sound effects. There is some good music at the title screens and some of the cutscenes, but really, music is not a thing for these games. So first we got Vince McMahon, and he's going to take a... We're going to put him on auto. Now here is, of course, my Scary Sherry, who is a cleric, and we'll go ahead and get to the cast menu, and she can cast Hold Person, which is basically a stun or a freeze. We'll get back to my big mage, and she's going to unleash a big old fireball. This is the lovely Miss Elizabeth. You can use your joystick, select and push the button of who you want to target. And everything becomes turn-based after that. Some people get to go faster than others. I guess that's all about a roll of the dice. Now, the other great thing about the turn-based in these games is that you can use terrain to your advantage. So what I mean is if you're a long ways away from a lot of spellcasters or really big, strong guys, sometimes it's better to go and run behind a wall out of their range and make them come to you and set up an ambush. Some games that helps out pretty well. I don't really recall coming across it that much on this, having to use that, but I know in Pool of Radiance I definitely did. This series also brought along, if I remember right, a new character called the Kendar, who uses a staff sling and is usually best as like a thief. I don't think that they were in any of the Forgotten Realms series, but I'd have to go back and take a look at Secret of the Silver Blades and Curse of the Azor Bonds. Once you win the battle, you can choose to continue the battle. So say somebody got hurt but not killed, there'll be the option to bandage that person. You definitely want to do that. That'll keep them from dying. Dying is a rough thing in this game. It's not too hard generally to get people resurrected, but they lose some of their constitution when they do get resurrected. So definitely bandage when you can. And then you'll get the option to take a look at loot. And take what you want and decide which character takes what. Very smoothly done with keyboard commands or the joystick. Of course, you can leave the treasure. Always lots of little load times. That's why I have these guys up here to help me out. You can come across doors you might have to bash multiple times. And you can, of course, encamp in any area you want. Depending on where you're at, the chances of getting disturbed while you're trying to memorize spells or heals is higher than others, depending on where you're at. In this case, we'll camp, fix up, and then wrap this up. Quick little fix command. Now quickly heal up your party. And that's that. That would be the Champions of Krynn for the Commodore 64. Now, a couple of pro tips I'm going to give you if you decide to play this game. And this kind of carries to almost all the games I've played so far in the Gold Box series. One, you're going to pool your money quite a bit to buy things and items at shops so you have a bigger pool of money to work with instead of just one individual what they're carrying. Whenever you leave that shop, do not forget to take the treasure or you're going to lose all that money you just pooled. The other one is before you start the game, there's two things you can do. Well, once you start the game, you can do this afterwards. But before you start the game, you can modify your characters. So don't spend a lot of time trying to get the best score roll. You can cheat and modify the characters to the max stats, which, of course I did. You can also select difficulty, which you can change anytime you want through the alter menu in the encampment area, which is where you also change the speed. But you can change it from novice all the way up to a pro type level, depending on how hard you want the game to be. As far as I know, it doesn't change the loot you receive, so I stick it on novice, and it's a pretty easy walkthrough. So there you have it. It was great to get back to a game review again, and of course, it being one of my favorite games, that's fantastic to get to cover this series again. Next up, I'm going to show a game I've never played on the Nintendo. Why? Because I never got a Nintendo, and that will be the first Final Fantasy, which I'm currently playing through right now. So that'll be the next gaming video. Tell me what you think about this one. Remember, I'm the Retro Gaming Hippie. I don't buy nostalgia because I am nostalgia.